Hello mathematicians, it's time for our math lesson. Today we're going to be doing math lesson 7.2.6 and it is about discussing remainders. Yesterday I asked you to make sure that you did your pages in your student book dealing with remainders. You needed to do pages 274, 275, and 276. I'm sorry that I had a typo on the page. If you didn't finish those pages, you should go ahead and do those now and pause the video and come back and do the video after you're done with those. So, but I'm going to assume that you have those done. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why you had different remainders on different problems. But the very first thing that I want you to do is take out your journal. And in our math journals, you're going to write the date, 4/16/20, and I want you to write this problem, 392 divided by 12. And in a second, I'm going to have you figure that out. But here's what I want to ask you. Between what two numbers, two whole numbers, does your answer lie on this one? And you see I wrote myself a little note down here because I want to ask, why is this helpful to think about this question? So I want you to take a moment and figure out what two numbers, just kind of estimate, what two whole numbers do you think 392 divided by 12, what two whole numbers would the answer be there? Well, here's what I did to figure it out, all right? And I wrote down here, and I know you might have trouble seeing, maybe not, I think you can see it. At first I thought, well, I know that 12 times 3 is 36, and I didn't go 12 times 10 because I know that that's going to be already way too much if I did 10, right? So 12 times 3 is only 36, and I know that if I take and multiply 3 times 10, that's going to be 30, and then I'd have to write my answer by 10. So here I went and I just did a ratio table right here. So because it was super easy then for me to write down my answers and see what I was doing. I did 1 unit equals 12, 3 groups equals 36. If I multiply the 3 times 10, I get 30, and if I multiply the 36 by 10, I get 360. And then I was thinking to myself, well, I know that if I add 2 groups of 12, 12 plus 12 is 24, 2 groups of 12 to 36, that's going to be 384. And that is just slightly under 392. So I wrote it down here on my ratio table. 2 groups of 12 is 24, right? And then when I add these together, 30 plus 2 is 32. 360 plus 24 is 364. And then just to add one more, I decided here's one more group right here. So that would be like 33 groups, right? One more group and one more group of 10 is 396. So my answer right here should be between 32 and 33. So with that being said, why is it important for me to try to kind of estimate what that answer should be? Do you have any ideas? Hopefully inside your brain you're saying, yeah, Miss Kroll, I know exactly why, because that way then I know if the answer that I'm coming up with might make sense in there. And that's it, because that's exactly why. Let's look at this this problem, 392 divided by 12, as if it were a story problem, all right? And I have a few to read down here. What if this was, let's say that it was cookies, all right? If you're dividing 392 cookies among 12 plates, all right, could you find the two whole numbers between which that lies there? Of course, it's going to be between 32 and 33, right? So what if it was money? If you're asking a question about money, then it's going to be between $32 and $33, right? And then we might have a decimal in there. What if I'm trying to figure out how many kids are going to see a play, and there are only 12 rows of seats? What would I do on there? How many kids could go into each row, right? So it wouldn't have to be, you can't split a kid, so it would have to be either 32 or 33, right? So we might have 12 rows and some of them might have 32 and one might have 33. That's how that would work. All right. Now, what I need to do is discuss your problems in your book. The problems that you did yesterday. You should have noticed that problems that had a fraction, what problems had a fraction? If you go back, you should see that it was probably, it should have been problems 1 and problem 3. And they're a fraction because those answers could potentially be split, right? On the first one, you need to know how many cookies that each student could have. And it came up to 3 1/4 cookies. And although we can split cookies into 3 1/4, right? You can split a cookie into 4th. Usually it's not a very easy thing to do. So even though you can give the answer that each student would get 3 1/4 cookies, and that would be the right answer for that problem, ideally, if we're out in the world, you're not going to want to maybe split a cookie into 1/4 with your friends. Somebody's probably going to say, it's okay, I don't need it. You can just have my part. So, because that's mostly what we do. And what about number 3? Number 3 was about making cakes. How many cakes were needed, right? And when you go to a store, you can't just order a half a cake. That's not how bakeries or wherever will work. Or if your mom is making cakes at home, she's not going to make just half of a cake. So for that particular answer, although it was 17 1/2, if you're going to go to the store and order cakes, you're going to need to round up on that and order 18 cakes, because that's what happens, again, in the real world. So which problems had decimal remainders? Look back at your book. If you look back at your story, you're probably going to find decimal remainders. You had problem number 4 was a money problem, right? And it's pretty easy to figure out that 8 1/2 can turn into $8.50, because a half of a dollar is 50 cents, and you can write it as 0.50 or 50 cents, right? So that's was an easy one, I think, or at least easy to figure out that it was going to be money, that's how you would do it, as the 50 cents. Now, move on to ones that are whole numbers. There were some answers that needed to be a whole number, all right? Look at problem number 2. You're looking at kids on a bus again. Can we split a kid? We still can't split a kid. So on that particular one, it has to be a whole number. And again, you would have to round up on that. So you could probably put 26 kids on most of the buses, but you're going to have some other buses that had 27 kids on them. All right. And the last one that I had is problem number 5. And it's back to being, how many kids could fit into rows. If you have 24 rows, you couldn't fit. Oh wait, I'm sorry. If you had, I'm looking at my wrong spots here. It would have to be between 2 numbers. However, 24 rows. I'm sorry. The bus numbers caught me off guard because it's 26 and 27, and it's so close to what I'm reading, and I highlighted things, but then I was second guessing what I had to say. So on the rows, again, you cannot split kids, so you would have to have some rows that had you could get 24 rows on that, because not everybody could fit into 23 rows. So you'd have to actually round up so that you have the right number of rows. All right, so here's the important big idea on this particular page. In a problem, you need to think about the context, all right? And sometimes your answer might be a whole number, all right? It might be, you might have to round up. You cannot buy 17 1/2 cakes to split between people at a party. You'd have to actually buy more, and then you just end up with a little bit of extra. Hopefully it's a cake you like, right? So even though the numbers might come out and be like a straight number, like 3 1/4 is a straight number, we call that a bare number for the answer for cookies that I might share between my friends. Again, that would be kind of messy, and I don't know that I could be super even to split cookies into 4th. They seem to crumble after you do a half of a cookie. So that would be a reason that you wouldn't want to do to split that. But the true answer would be 3 1/4. But you have to think about the context. How many would people get Some would get 3, some would get 4 on that. All right. Quick lesson today, because all we had to do was review what you did. So hopefully that was good and you have that down. What we're going to do is we do have a little bit of work tonight, homework to do tonight. You have 2 pages for daily practice in your student book. We did not do page 277 last night. You can do that today. It's more division with remainders to practice. And then there's more division practice on page 278. And you're going to see we're at the end of the unit then, or the end of that module. So we'll go on to module 3 next week. You also have a home connections paper you need to do tonight. It is page 143 and 144, and it is called More Division Practice. So lots of division today. We're practicing, making sure we understand how to do division. All right. And our spiral review is still Q 4.1, and that will be due on Friday. All right. Have fun, mathematicians.